In today's video, we're taking a look at an article that suggests we could see a blockbuster trade between Toronto and Detroit. Plus, we have a couple of signings to take a look at, a significant update on the potential future downtown arena of the Ottawa Senators. We're taking a look at the contract of Seth Jarvis that we discussed earlier today and looking at its unique structure and how it may become a trend in the NHL. Plus, Patrick Laine, we know he rejected a trade. We think we now know what team that was to. Plus, we're going to talk a little bit further on some of the more details we've learned on the untimely passing of Columbus star Johnny Gaudreau. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to talk about here today. Before we jump into today's news, I just want to touch a little bit further on the very unfortunate situation involving Johnny Gaudreau and his brother Matthew. I mean, the last day and a half, going on 2 days now, it's just been such a sad time around the NHL. Of course, yesterday in the morning when the news was confirmed, I obviously made a quick video talking about what had happened and what we knew, and then the rest of the day, like normally I would do other news videos for the day, and it just did not feel right. I mean, it was just a dark day in the NHL, so that's why last night I did post another video late, but it was not anything that I created yesterday. A lot of the team videos I've done, the GM Report Card series, are usually done 2-3 days ahead, and I had a bunch of them, including the Kraken video done from a few days ago. So I posted that just to, in case people want to watch something different and take their minds off things. But ultimately, there was no time to be making other new content. We all needed time to process everything that happened with the Gaudreaus in the family. Obviously, like I said, it's the Gaudreaus were gathered for Johnny and Matthew's sister Katie's wedding. And instead, they're dealing with this instead. Since then, we've learned about what had happened. We've seen the first social media post from his wife, Meredith, just talking about how much of a great person and father he was. It's just so sad. We've seen memorials outside of Nationwide Arena in Columbus, the Saddle Dome in Calgary. There's a fundraiser, too, that's been going on for Johnny's brother, Matthew. Of course, Johnny Gaudreau, a very successful hockey player, made lots of money, I'm sure, that from a financial standpoint at least. His wife Meredith and kids will hopefully be in really good shape from that sense. But of course, brother Matthew never played at the higher level and, didn't have that earning level that Johnny did. So there was some fundraising going on for him. And of course, he's married and his wife is pregnant with their first child at that. So they did a GoFundMe with a goal of 30,000. It's already exceeded 300,000. It's already 10 times. I'll show you the GoFundMe in case you are interested in adding a little bit to it. They've done really well. A lot of NHL players have contributed to it. I've seen lots of big donations, anywhere from 500 to 1,000 or more. A lot of smaller ones too. So it certainly takes all kinds to help people out. So the hockey world is certainly coming together here to help the Gaudreaus and just kind of, offer love, peace, and support to the best we can. But yeah, I mean, it's got to be one of the most tragic stories that I think I've ever had in hockey in my lifetime. He's such a young man, a high-profile player. Just the way everything went down, it's just so unfair, and just life can be really hard sometimes. It's one of those moments, and it was really tough to make that video when the news broke, just to find the words. I usually never have issues finding words. I can talk for hours and days, and people, I'm sure many of you have commented how long-winded I can be. My family tells me that all the time. It's not a surprise. I don't take it personally. I don't take offense to it. It's just who I am. And I struggled to get through that video. It just really hit home. I keep thinking about those two little kids. Johnny left behind a very loving family, and this wife and son and daughter, and it's really tough. It's just not fair. So obviously we're gonna try to get through and talk about the other news here. We've seen lots of tributes for Gaudreau around the league. They keep pouring in, and it just it's going to be one of those seasons, I think, where we continuously honor him and offer tributes to him And it's just, I hope they, the teams, Calgary and Columbus especially, I think they should retire 13, put it up in the rafters. Some have suggested, which I'd be okay with, maybe renaming the Lady Byng Trophy. He's won that. It's the only individual trophy he's won. And, I know a lot of players will make a big fuss for the Byng, but to win the Gaudreau, that might mean more to them. I don't know. Just, I'm sure the league will. I just hope that they find lots of ways to honor what he has. He's been such a hero for a lot of, especially smaller players. I've seen Cole Caulfield posting how, Johnny was his hero, which totally makes sense. So, anyways, I just wanted to touch a little bit further on Johnny and just try to honor him best we can and try to celebrate the great player and person, family person that he was. And, there's lots of great clips I know that I've shared on my X account as well, just kind of looking back and trying to reminisce a little bit. If you want to, sometimes it's good for healing just to kind of watch some highlights and kind of, just remember just how great Johnny Gaudreau really was. And as I said earlier in the video I posted earlier today about Seth Jarvis, if there's one player in the NHL that might be able to make you smile in a tough day, it's that young man. That Seth Jarvis is such a fun-loving player, and he signed a very unique contract. Was announced today with the Carolina Hurricanes. 8 years, $7.42 million is going to be the average annual value. There is over $15 million in deferred money. So deferred money is not something you really hear of in the NHL. The Hurricanes did do this a little bit too with the Jacob Slavin contract, but it wasn't really widely known at the time, and it wasn't really discussed, I don't think. But you do see this procedure, this strategy, if you will, in other sports, like I know with MLB, if you follow baseball at all. Shohei Ohtani's contract with the Dodgers, that was the big, massive one from this past offseason. Tons and tons of deferred money. So essentially what the structure is here, just to kind of break things down for Jarvis, there's $15.67 million deferred across multiple seasons until July 1st, 2032, which is one day after his contract expires. So the 8-year deal would expire June 30th, 2032. So the structure is in year one, which would be right now, he gets a signing bonus of $7.233 million, and then he'll earn $2 million in base salary this year. Next year, he's got a $4 million signing bonus, and then a salary of $4.25. Years 4, 5, and 6 are all straight salary, $6.57 million. And then the final 2 years, he earns $1 million in salary and have a signing bonus of $5.187 million. So lots of signing bonus money here. Obviously, you've got over $16 million in signing bonus money during those 8 years. And then, like I said, over $15.5 million deferred, which will be paid out July 1 of 2032, when he'll be most likely signing his next contract. So this allows the AAV to be reduced. Normally, if you take the total money here and divide it out over 8 years, he'd have a cap hit of 7.9. Instead, it's 7.42. So this gives them more money to work with throughout the 8 years to make the team stronger and spend more money elsewhere. Also, in some ways, it's good to the owner. In some ways, it's not. It allows him to pay some of that money down the road, right? So he doesn't have to dish it out over quite such a period of time. So you have a little extra time to pay it out. But, obviously, if you think about, inflation and how, value of money changes over time and everything, there's obviously a little risk on Jarvis's part, but at the same time, none of that's going to count against the cap. That's the brilliant part of it, is that the $15.6 billion in deferred money will not count against the cap. There is no year 9 in the contract. So they just reduced his AAV by almost like $500,000, and it kind of goes nowhere. So leave it to Eric Tulsky and was it Tyler Delos there now? Like, they've got a brilliant brain trust when it comes to the math and the analytics and all that. And I suspect that this is going to become a trend. I would suspect that the Leon Draisaitl contract coming up probably going to have something to do like the McDavid, like all the top stars especially. Why wouldn't they? They could get paid more money and not have it all count against the cap. It's a major loophole, and I do wonder, and this is something that's been in the CBA for like almost 20 years. And it's just never really been utilized. So I know I've seen people popping up, especially like Leaf fans, of course, because they've been so hampered with the top 4 forward contracts. Well, why didn't we have anything like that? Good question. They're a team that could afford to do it. Why they haven't implemented that strategy, difficult to say. Anyways, very curious how this is going to play out. I do think I can see it becoming a trend across the league. Time will tell. Let me know what you think about this. It just makes too much sense, in my opinion, not to do it. And I love the contract for Jarvis. I think he's a terrific player who has not even scratched the surface of his ceiling, and I think that'll pay off in droves over the course of the 8 years. A couple quick signings as well. Robert Bortuzzo, former St. Louis Blue, who was there for a long time, played with a few other teams, most recently the New York Islanders, signs with Utah. It's a 1-year, 2-way contract. It's a more lucrative AHL deal, paying him $350,000 should he end up in the minors. So that adds some extra depth to their blue line. And a longtime NHL veteran, Tyler Johnson, goes to Boston on a PTO. So we know Johnson's been remaining unsigned. He did not want to go back to Chicago. We know that he had expressed interest and desire to play with a team that was a little bit more competitive and a chance for playoffs, a chance to be in a better situation that way. Johnson's certainly not the same player he was early in his career, but at this point he could add some extra depth to the Bruins. I will have to wait and see, I guess, how things go for him in camp and if he lands himself a contract. And Toronto, Easton Cowan, arguably probably their top prospect, you could say, is not going to be attending training camp with his OHL team, the London Knights. He is going to be remaining focused on making the Maple Leafs roster. So instead of going to camp with London, he's going to stay, train with Toronto, and go through training camp there and see what he can do. So Easton Cowan will be making every attempt to turn pro if he can. I mean, he can still go back to London if the Leafs feel he's not ready for a full-time role. Big update as well from Bruce Garriock on the Post Media regarding the potential new arena downtown Lebreton Flats of the Ottawa Senators. We know that there's a memorandum of understanding, and they have until the end of September to come to terms with the NCC to put a lease in place to move forward with this new arena. Of course, the current ownership there, Michael Landlauer, inherited all that from the previous regime. He had gotten himself a year extension because obviously he took ownership last year, right around the time that it was kind of almost expiring. So that's coming up here again. And ultimately, sounds like there's lots of work to be done, if you will, and a lot of concessions need to be made, probably more so on the NCC side if they really want to move forward with this situation. So essentially, it's a 7-acre piece of land that they've set aside, to my understanding here, for the Sens to consider building upon. A couple of the concerns: one, they do want to build an arena district. They're kind of using the Edmonton arena and what they've got going on there is kind of like their template, if you will. So they want to have an arena district. They don't want to just have an arena. So I think there's some concerns that the piece of land might not be big enough. I think there's also a lot of concern about the availability of parking. It sounds like there's not a whole lot of room for public parking with the current plans and the way everything would be structured there. So there's concerns that way. And there's some major environmental concerns as well, more so from the requirements from the NCC, that is, and what those requirements would cost. I know Cy Leader, the president of the team, estimated that a new building could cost approximately $1.2 billion. And they would be requesting some degree of government assistance at all 3 levels, including the local, municipal, provincial, and federal. So it's certainly, like I said, the environmental concerns from the NCC requirements, like having a net zero, carbon output and all that. So it's all great. It's not that you don't want to be environmentally friendly, but, obviously a lot of those environmental requirements do drive the cost way up, which, there has to be like a healthy balance there, right? So ultimately, lots of work to be done. They're far apart on a deal. I don't think if the deadline comes and goes and they don't reach an agreement, it doesn't mean the Sens won't move downtown. I think Michael Landlauer is committed 100% to making whatever that next move is be a lot better experience for the fan base. That they're all about the fans. I have no doubt about that. So the only thing is there are other downtown options besides Lebreton. So it's not like they absolutely have to. It's not like Lebreton or bust, in my opinion. I think there are other viable options there. And of course, it's a negotiation too, right? So, I don't think you'd be hearing them kind of go public with some concerns if they were close and there was, more optimism that a deal was going to be reached. So, again, it doesn't mean it's not going to happen, but it sounds like they need and the NCC, who looks after that land and makes these decisions here, to kind of make some concessions, if you will, and before there's going to be more optimism of getting something done. The other big thing I want to talk about today as well, Patrick Laine. We know that he ultimately got traded to the Montreal Canadiens after weeks and weeks of speculation of, we knew he wanted out, we knew Columbus wanted to move him, we knew Montreal was a very likely destination. We talked about it on multiple locations before it ended up actually going down. But we also talked about recently we found out not long after the trade went down that there was at least one other trade that was reportedly agreed to, and this is just a rumor, so we can't say 100%, but it's out there that there was another trade that Don Waddell, the GM of the Jackets, had agreed to, that Laine used his trade protection to block. And now the speculation is that was a deal with the Philadelphia Flyers. So Laine did not want to go to Philly, supposedly, according to this report, and that the trade was for Ryan Johansson. Now, of course, we know what's going on with Johansson. The Flyers are now, we haven't got word that they did terminate his contract. We know they put him on unconditional waivers to terminate the contract, and then there was going to be a battle or a fight from his side and his agent to grieve that. But to the best of our knowledge, based on all the sites that look after the contracts and all that, I don't know that they actually did terminate. I know they were going to. So I'm not sure where that stands right now. And if they do, it's going to be grieved, there's no doubt. But Johansson going back to Columbus, I mean, they obviously did way better with the Montreal trade. There's no doubt. Obviously, they could have taken the Laine money in full, and obviously Johansson with the $4 million cap hit after having money retained elsewhere, would have been a savings for Columbus. But would he have played? I don't know that, right? So it's difficult to say. But Laine reportedly rejected the Philadelphia Flyers. So take that for what you will. And as I mentioned, I come across an article today discussing a potential blockbuster trade. Now, this is just the author's opinion. Okay, I don't want people to get it the wrong idea. This is not, a big insider like Elliot Friedman or somebody saying these two teams are talking about a blockbuster deal. This is just the author's opinion that based on the situations of the Red Wings and the Leafs, that they should consider this move. And it's a blockbuster deal that would see Mitch Marner traded to Detroit for top right-hand defenseman Mo Seider. Now, we know Mo Seider's unsigned right now with Detroit. He and his teammate Lucas Raymond, both at this point with Steve Yzerman, the Red Wings, remain unsigned. They're both important pieces to that team long-term. They're likely going to get eventually, whether it's Detroit or somewhere else, which I still think Detroit is where they're going to stay, a long-term deal, 8 years, $8 million, something along those lines. So clearly, I guess the whole premise here of the trade request would be that, Seider's unsigned. Obviously, Detroit's having a difficult time coming to terms. We know that, so there's that. So maybe maybe things don't go well negotiation-wise, and they do consider a trade. And then you've got Toronto, who we know that there's been no talks about an extension on Marner. There was all the rumors all summer long about him being moved. It hasn't happened yet. At this point, it seems unlikely that it's going to, at least in the short term. And that it could be a way for both teams to settle their, the rosters here with these players that likely need to get moved. So, to me, does a trade make sense? For Toronto, it absolutely does. To me, if Detroit would seriously offer up Seider for Marner, I'd take that in a heartbeat. No disrespect to Mitch Marner, but you need a kind of player like Seider. He's young. He's got good size. He's the right shot. He's great on both ends of the ice. He would be the ideal top defenseman for them. So if they offered up Seider and this was a legit thing, Toronto has to take that deal. Now, on Detroit's side, I think they need to extend Marner for it to make any sense, right? There's no point in taking Marner for 1 year for giving up a stud defenseman like Mo Seider. That doesn't make any sense for Detroit. So there'd have to be an extension in there. Clearly Detroit's not that far from home for Marner. Might be a little quieter market for him to play in. But if you look at their team and where they're at with their roster, they have not to say, I mean, Marner would still be one of their best, if not the best forward. I mean, Dylan Larkin's probably a more complete player, plays center, captain, all that, so you're going to be right up there. But, they have a lot of good wingers as it stands. Not to say that, like I said, Marner would still be better than most of them, if not all, and would still make the team better, but it would kind of have to, in turn, you'd have to see some other moves from Detroit to make it make sense, because it would push everybody, down the depth chart here a little bit as well, right? And now their blue line is already not great, in my opinion. Detroit's blue line is the weak point of the team. They do not have enough great young defensemen, and they'd be moving their arguably there's no doubt he's their top defenseman by a good margin. So as much as Marner's a great player, I just don't think that makes any sense for Detroit. For Toronto, it absolutely does. There's no doubt. But would Yzerman offer up Seider for Marner? I don't think so. I'd be shocked if he did. But if Yzerman ever does that and Brad Treliving says no, then he should be fired, because I think that's a great, great trade for their side of the coin here. But, I guess let me know from both sides, regardless of what team you cheer for, or if you're just a neutral fan for another team. Do you think this trade makes sense? I mean, looking around for some interesting, trade ideas and or speculation on what's going down in the NHL. We've seen a good flurry of activity here in mid to late August, which is unusual, right? And of course, like I said, the last 24, 48 hours been kind of grim, kind of dark and sorrow after everything that went down. This is just kind of a fun trade idea based on this article that I came across. Just want to see what everybody thinks. So let me know in the comments, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.